Alright everyone, so today I wanted to go over how to get 140% plus pierce rate on Blue Lilia. Now pierce rate is easily the #1 stat that you want to aim for on her because Blue Lilia is all about pierce rate. And the big thing about her is actually her unique Dark Symphony. Increases all allies' pierce rate by 50% of the value of the hero's pierce rate applies when entering battle. That part at the end there is actually pretty important. Just keep in mind that you won't actually get this bonus if you use her as your sub member. So 50% though, that's huge. So if you have her at 140% pierce rate, that means that all the other members on your team are going to get a 70% pierce rate bonus just from her unique alone. So that's absolutely huge, and where you really use her is you want to synergize using her with other team members that really benefit from pierce attacks. Of course, units like Blue Demon Meliodas. So another thing that a lot of people have been asking about is what happens at 100% plus pierce rate? Is it still worth going for? The answer is yes. The way that the pierce rate formula works is you will still get a lot of benefit even if you do go above and beyond 100%. So it's one of those situations where the more the better, and you're going to see some absolutely crazy damage numbers if you can get your Blue Lilia to 120, 140% pierce rate. It's going to be absolutely crazy. So let's get into the breakdown of how to get that kind of pierce rate. So starting off here without anything, not even her base pierce rate, you're at 0%, but right off the bat, you can see that she has a very high base pierce rate of 50%. Now, this is actually extremely significant for another reason, which I'll talk about in a second here, but the reason is Valenti. Valenti is going to be her counter, and Valenti actually has a much lower base resistance than the base pierce rate of Blue Lilia. So the question that a lot of people bring up is, how is Blue Lilia going to do in ungeared PvP? And the answer is actually pretty darn good, because you won't have gear bonuses to influence your actual stats. You have to rely a lot more on your base stats. And having that much higher base pierce rate is actually going to be a huge advantage for Blue Lilia compared to Valenti when it comes to ungeared PvP. So that right off the bat is 50% of the 140% that we are going to be talking about. Now, next up here is something that unfortunately you will not get the bonus of in ungeared PvP, but it is still absolutely huge, up to 60%. So this can bring you up from 50% all the way to 110% pierce rate, and that is going to be gear. Specifically though, two pieces of gear, that is going to be your bracelet and your ring. And what I'm talking about is actually going to be the bonus rolls, or what I like to call the substats. So I'll show you guys here on Green Lilia, because this is the version that we actually have right now. I'm actually recording this video a couple hours before the banner drops. Don't worry, I'm already ready to summon and all. I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well, but we don't actually have her in-game right now, unless you guys are watching the video in the future, of course, in which case, ignore what I just said right there. But anyway, let's get to mock Blue Lilia, and let's go to equipment here. So, alright, now, for the 60% from equipment, it's really just going to come from the bracelet and also the ring. And it's all going to end up coming from the bonus rolls. So what you do not want to do is actually what I'm doing right here, and using the using a gear that is focused on the attack substat. That is a no-go. Don't do that. Blue Lilia is really, you want to maximize her pierce as much as possible, even if it means compromising her attack stats doing so, because the amount of bonus that you get, it's not just for her passive, it's going to give it to everybody else. So like pierce just becomes absolutely insane and easily the #1 stat priority. So going to the bonus rolls, you can end up getting a total of 6% pierce rate for each of the bonus rolls, 5 of them per item, so that's 30% is the total possible pierce rate that you can end up getting per item. And then of course you got 2 items, the 2 at the top here, that are going to have the capability of rolling pierce rates. Now, something to keep in mind here is, if you don't have a lot of awakening stones or anvils, it might actually be worth taking a look at just using gear that only costs gold in order to reroll the bonus rolls just to get the pierce rate on Blue Lilia. That's how important it is. It's going to be worth compromising things like your attack and other stats specifically just to get pierce. Don't do this and get attack rate. You absolutely want to make sure to have a pierce set for her, and even if you use a rare set, an uncommon set, a common set, whatever works best for you, it doesn't have to be SSR. Pierce is going to be the much higher priority on that list rather than going for the actual rarity of the item. So that's a big one. Now we are at 110% pierce rates out of the 140%. Now, next up here is also really important, and this is going to actually turn this food into much better food simply because of the way that her passive works. And I'm talking, of course, about Pierce Food. So Pierce Food is actually about to become a whole lot better because of the way that Blue Lilia's passive actually works there. Normally, Pierce Food gives you 20% pierce rate, but now because of the Dark Symphony, what actually happens here is, think about it this way, right? You get 20% pierce rate for Blue Lilia and her pierce rate herself, but because she now gives everybody else half of her pierce rate, you actually get 30% total pierce rate from food on all the other units on your team, because they're going to get half of Blue Lilia's pierce rate from the food, which is 10%, but then they're also going to get the benefit from the original pierce rate food themselves, which is 20%. So you add the 20% and the 10% from Blue Lilia's passive, and now pierce rate food is actually a lot better with Blue Lilia out than it used to be before. So that's a really, really big one right there, and that's going to be an additional 20% pierce rate you can add. So that brings you up from 110 to 130% pierce rate. Now there's still 10% plus left. The next one is also pretty important, and it's going to count for 7% of the remaining 10% pierce rate or so that we have left. And this is going to actually be cosmetics here. And it's specifically going to be weapons. There's going to be 2 weapons available that have 7% pierce rate for Blue Lilia. And you can actually see here that one of them in the bottom left, the UR one, the eyeball, has got a 2% pierce rate on it. And then you also have the one in the middle right, and that's going to have 5% pierce rate on it. So registering both of those right there is going to give you an additional 7% pierce rate, which of course is going to apply 3.5% to everybody else on your team. So I would say cosmetics for Blue Lilia, specifically for that pierce rate. Normally I would say like, other things might be a little bit higher on the priority list, but because your team members get half of her pierce rate, it really might be worth considering going for these very specific cosmetics. So, all right, now 3% left. The last 3% pierce rate on Blue Lilia is simply going to come from her 6-star Awakening bonus. So those of you guys who are actually watching the video before she's coming out, or if you haven't summoned for her yet, this is kind of your little warning here, preparation to make sure that you guys have all of the stuff in order to, get her maxed out, if that's what you want to do right away, because she is not just going to be good for PvP, she's also going to be really good for farming as well. That pierce rate is going to apply to Blue Demon Meliodas, who is going to just hit like an absolute truck with all that pierce rate on Blue Lilia, his gear. It's going to be absolutely crazy. So I'm not just talking about the chalices for Awakening, getting that 3% Awakening bonus, but also, boss materials if you want to take her up to level 80, pendants if you need those, books, gold, just all the typical stuff that you need in order to, get her all ready to go for maxed out combat. And I also want to say there's a couple of other things here that can increase you above 140% that weren't actually in the list that I talked about, but they're not going to be as practical. Like, I know that Blue Jericho actually does have a passive that gives you the capability of an additional 10% pierce, but I don't think there's going to be many people, for example, that use Blue Jericho's unique in a team with Blue Lilia. So, I didn't want to include that in the main list right there. I know Weinhardt actually does also have as passive, gives 8% pierce rate each turn for a total of up to 40% pierce rate. However, you have to keep in mind that this unique actually activates after Blue Lilia's unique does, like in terms of the priority order. So I do not believe that you actually get the benefit from the Weinhardt Sniper unique. And I'm not too sure about Blue Jericho either. So keep in mind that, this is kind of a little bit more iffy here. I don't actually play JP, so I'm sure somebody in the chat comments can kind of confirm, deny the specifics about what I'm talking about here. So I also know, though, I've heard that there are a couple of titles in JP that actually do give you a couple of percentage points, something like 3 or 4%. So, on the global version, we might be getting that in the future. So there's a couple little things that you could get a couple extra percentage, but that 140% really should be like the maximum milestone for the pierce rate that you're really looking for on her. And I do want to give a shout out because this was absolutely awesome, and I was able to confirm a lot of the stuff that I just told you guys with this. And a huge shout out to T-Long Gaming for this awesome infographic here that has all the information about Blue Lilia and her pierce rate, as well as he included adding food to her as kind of a separate section there on the right. So I love infographics, especially considering they work so well in videos. So huge shout outs. And if you guys want to take a look at this in a little bit more info, I'll go ahead and leave a link to the actual Reddit post in the description of the video. So feel free to check it out. But anyway, I have shared a ton of info with you guys in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and if you did and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine, so thank you so much to all of you who decide to do that. And more 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross Global videos should be popping up on the screen right about now. Feel free to check them out. But if not, until next time, take care everyone, and this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.